Former First Lady Rosalind Carter once said, "There are only 4 kinds of people in this world: those who have been caregivers, those who are currently caregivers, those who will be caregivers, and those who will need caregivers." We all have been or will be caregivers, providing long-term care for an elderly relative, a neighbor with disabilities, or a friend. Almost every family in America is affected by the need for long-term services and supports. Families assume huge emotional and logistical burdens to care for loved ones who have disabilities or are getting older. These personal problems are frequently compounded by the crazy way long-term care is financed. The good news is the financial problem is solvable. We can make long-term care affordable for people to receive and to provide. And we can do it for the price of a cup of coffee every day. Here are 2 good reasons we need to change this system now.
A family affair, the rising cost of growing old. Americans now pay more to care for mom and dad than on their own health care.
From ABC News headquarters, this is World News with Charles Gibson.
Next, a different kind of financial sacrifice, one being made by tens of millions of Americans: the cost of caring for an aging loved one. A study out today found that it costs about $5,500 a year on average to care for an aging parent or spouse. That's more than the average American family spends on their own health care. Here's ABC's David Wright.
Every parent knows about sacrifices. Many children are learning. At age 28, Shelley Tillman is part of a growing trend. She now cares full-time for her mom, who has a brain tumor.
Awesome job, Daisy. Every morning I wake up, I start her with a feeding. She has to be changed, and then she gets turned every 2 hours. If you'd asked me 2 years ago if I'd be doing this, if I'd even be capable of doing this, I'd say no.
Tillman's monthly expenses, roughly $3,000. She works part-time, but almost the whole paycheck goes to the home care nurse, who stays with her mom while she's at the office. Today's study found that family caregivers spend, on average, 10% of their household income to manage the financial burden of an aging relative. Most of the money goes for food, transportation, as well as medical care and prescription drugs. And when the aging relative lives in another city, the costs run even higher. On average, long-distance caregivers spend nearly $9,000 a year. It's an issue that affects more and more Americans each year. An estimated 34 million of us provide some sort of care for a family member age 50 or older. And as the baby boomers continue to age, that number is likely to climb even higher. Home care is cheap compared to a nursing home. Debbie Rosenman spends $281 a day, more than $100,000 a year, for her mother, who has Alzheimer's, to live in this facility.
We're basically spending our children's inheritance because we want my mom to have the best quality of care.
Shelley Tillman wants the best for her mom, too, but it's not easy.
So it's not really a sacrifice. I just love her.
An emotional burden and a financial one, too. David Wright, ABC News, Washington.
All of us are caregivers. You probably don't think of it that way, but we are. Whether it's next door, across town, or 2,000 miles away, we do it. Many people assume long-term services and supports are provided in facilities, but long-term care is much bigger than that. It includes all the aid that you and other family caregivers provide to help your mother or uncle or neighbor stay at home. It's not just for the elderly, but for people of all ages. The truth is that if you live to be age 65, you have a 69% likelihood of needing long-term services and supports. In addition, of the millions who need long-term assistance, close to 40% are under age 65. And you're likely to get that care at home. Indeed, most caregiving is provided in the home. It's the meals that are dropped off, the rides to the doctor, the help with the shower, and the trips to the grocery store. Caregiving is a major American pastime. One recent study found that the average caregiver spends 35.4 hours a week caring for a loved one. That's a full-time job. And it's not just for a day or a week. More than half of us provide care for more than 3 years, and a third give care for more than 5 years. The numbers show that families have taken on a huge role, the primary role, in paying for care for the infirm and people with disabilities. Many people believe that health insurance or Medicare pay for long-term services and supports. But the truth is that the two biggest payers are Medicaid, which pays for care for those who are impoverished, and you. On average, families involved in caregiving contribute more than $5,000 per year out of pocket to pay for caregiving-related food, transportation, medicine, and other expenses for a loved one. And businesses are paying too. Caregiving responsibilities cost U.S. businesses more than $2,000 every year per employee. The majority of caregivers in the workforce say caregiving drastically changes the way they work. They leave early, miss days, and suffer from depression, high blood pressure, and other stress-induced illnesses. State and federal governments also feel the pressure. Medicaid programs, which currently pay partial costs of long-term services and supports, weren't designed to be the primary payer for these services. Unfortunately, that's what they've become, and governors are feeling the heat. Long-term care costs for Medicaid alone now have a $100 billion price tag and are growing dramatically. Now meet Rose. She died at age 97. When it came to planning for her golden years, Rose did everything right. She worked and saved, earning a teacher's pension and health insurance for life. She even bought a long-term care insurance policy. But when Rose started needing help, she quickly maxed out her long-term care insurance benefit. When she couldn't make her own meals anymore, Rose decided to move into a senior housing community. Her rent and expenses exceeded her $2,500 a month pension, and she had to spend down her savings. 8 years later, her savings were gone, and her health took a turn for the worse. That's when Rose's son, Steve, age 62 at the time, stepped in. He bought her groceries and covered her medical copays and phone bill. But the few dollars here and there quickly became nearly $10,000 a year. Caring for Rose became a second job. Steve missed his own doctor's appointments and drove over 200 miles round trip so his mother could see her doctor. But Rose kept falling on her walks. She needed a caregiver, but she couldn't afford one, so Steve began tapping his own retirement savings. With no other options, Rose moved to a nursing home and went on Medicaid. New York State paid nearly $150,000 for Rose's care in the nursing home. Steve contributed an additional $15,000 for someone to take Rose out for walks, her favorite activity. She died with less than $400 to her name. What's the moral of Rose's story? That the status quo does not work. It encourages self-imposed poverty and welfare. It drains family resources. It even encourages elderly couples to divorce or transfer assets. It robs future generations of inheritance. It unnecessarily forces people into settings like nursing homes. Something must change. America's 76 million baby boomers will cause our country's older population to double. Imagine the country's financial burden for care doubling what it is today. The demographics are indisputable. We're all getting older. Adults with disabilities are living longer and needing more assistance. Most of us will need to provide care, and many of us are likely to receive care. Slowly but surely, the current ways we finance long-term care are eroding our society's health and economy. This is a national tragedy. Families willing to fulfill their caregiving responsibilities are undermined by the ill-planned, unsustainable, crazy way long-term services and supports are financed. The irony is that we've known for decades that long-term care is an insurable set of circumstances, just like insuring for your health care, or your mortgage, or a tree falling on your roof. ASA decided it was time to solve this problem. We set out to study every conceivable way to finance long-term services and supports. We searched worldwide for approaches that work. Our conclusion? We need a national insurance trust charged with providing affordable, flexible, and accessible long-term care. And we discovered it can be done in a fiscally sound way for the daily cost of a cup of coffee. While we must leave many of the details up to the political process, we know that at the core, we have a workable solution. The time is right for action. People are worried and looking for a solution. We recently surveyed 1,000 registered voters and found that nearly 3/4 of Americans believe that financing reform for long-term care must be part of healthcare reform. As stated in the National Commission for Quality Long-Term Care's final report, there will be no real solution to the healthcare crisis without a complementary solution to the long-term care crisis, and vice versa. Neither crisis can be addressed in isolation. A majority of people also favor the idea of a national insurance trust to help pay for long-term services and supports. Let's go back to Shelley Tillman and her mother, who you saw in the ABC News clip when we began. Let's imagine a different scenario for them. What if Shelley's mother, before she became ill, had paid about $2.87 per day, around what many of us pay for coffee in the morning, as the premium for a national insurance program? Then, when she needed long-term services and supports, what if that insurance program paid her $27,000 per year, or $75 a day, to pay for that care? Under our plan, Shelley's mother could use that money to pay for the care and services that meet her unique needs. Maybe that would mean hiring an aide who could help bathe and turn her when Shelley's at work, or paying her neighbor to shovel a snowy sidewalk, or flying Shelley's sister into town so her daughter could take a much-needed vacation. Whatever the case, our plan empowers individuals to decide what kind of long-term services and supports they need. Would all of the concerns and costs go away? Of course not. Would they be easier to manage? Absolutely. Actuarial science demonstrates that when large numbers of people join insurance pools, more people can receive coverage in an affordable way. To test this in long-term services and supports, we commissioned a study from the Moran Company, a nationally known economics consulting firm. Moran modeled a national long-term care insurance program that would be sustainable. As people need long-term care, they would qualify for a daily cash benefit. Individuals would decide what kind of care they need and use the funds to pay to receive it in a place they choose, even at home. The plan would support what many of us are doing in an actuarially sound way. ASA's long-term care solution combines a benefit like this with a new insurance program with monthly premiums paid by all of us who can afford them. The proposal is based on 3 underlying principles. Choice. Everyone deserves choices in the types of services they purchase. Since most long-term services and supports are delivered at home, the benefits can help pay for care at home. Beneficiaries and those who care for them choose the services they need. Responsibility. We all have a responsibility to plan for our potential long-term care needs so that successive generations do not face the same kind of trade-offs we face. By paying into a plan each month, we can take personal responsibility for anticipated needs. The government's accountability, then, is to help those with the least means. Fairness. Every adult who becomes disabled is eligible for the benefits, and all adults pay into the insurance trust. There are no exclusions for pre-existing conditions. We've done some complicated economic modeling, and it comes down to this. For about the cost of a cup of coffee, paid in over time, you'll be able to help cover the costs of your basic needs. For example, if participants were to receive $75 a day, that would cost 73 cents a day, about the cost of a small cup of coffee, and provide 1 year of coverage. Or, if we decide on the medium cup for $1.68 per day, we could be assured of 3 years' worth of benefits at $75 a day. Or we could choose the large cup for $2.87 per day and receive lifetime benefits of $75 a day. We have successful experience in this country with large insurance programs that cover millions of people and remain financially solvent. Similar national long-term care insurance plans are already working in Europe and Japan. The long-term care solution would make sure that Medicaid remains solvent for those for whom it was truly intended. The Moran report estimates that if the lifetime benefit had been in place in 2005, Medicaid could have saved $50 billion, about half of all its long-term care costs. There are many details to be worked out and many variables to be determined. Should cash be the one and only benefit provided at the participant's discretion? Could people choose a level of plan? Who will oversee the National Trust? What would administration costs be? As with the creation of Social Security years ago, or Medicare Part D recently, we will need to decide as a country how this program will be managed. What we do know is that the funds for this program must be protected to fulfill the promise for those in need. But no matter the details, we have a moral imperative to support caregiving, a duty and honor that families bear nobly. We have a fiscal imperative to create a sound economic approach to long-term services and supports. And we have a political imperative to reform a system that is broken, absolutely unsustainable, and counterproductive to societal health. To fulfill these imperatives requires political leadership. We must inspire that leadership. Caregivers make up long to-do lists to make sure the work gets done. We've made a to-do list for you. On it are 3 things. 1. Call your member of Congress. Tell them we need long-term care reform as part of healthcare reform. 2. Invite them to meet with an ASA representative to talk about the solution. Tell them they can make long-term care affordable for the price of a cup of coffee every day. 3. Think about your own long-term care needs and start saving and planning. The National Investment Center, in its recent report on financing long-term care, summed up the situation very well. Informal care will continue because Americans will take care of their mothers and fathers, even if it involves substantial personal sacrifice. The question is whether and when we will have the political will to do anything different. The time is now. We can make it affordable to care. For more information, visit thelongtermcaresolution.org.